A single paycheck in 1955 could hold a family, a mortgage, groceries, gas, and savings. Today, 2 paychecks can barely hold your attention long enough to read your bank statement. And the reason isn't just inflation. It's not just that things cost more. It's that American life used to run on a completely different operating system. Slower, simpler, and built with guardrails that most of us don't even know we lost. So when did we agree to trade this silence for more stuff? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to walk through one ordinary week in 1955. Not for nostalgia, not for tips, just to see the machine that was running underneath, the friction that kept debt from forming, the guardrails that kept the week from leaking, and the moment, somewhere in the last 50 years, when the speed of everything outran the structure that was keeping us steady. Because if you've been doing everything right, and it still doesn't feel like enough, you're not broken. The week is, and you can see it once you know what you're looking at. We talk about that era and say it was easier because things were cheaper. Mathematically, it was. But the real difference wasn't the price of milk. It was the speed of your money. Today, your money is digital, invisible, and fast. It can leave while you're not looking. It can leave while you're asleep. It can leave in 10 directions at once, quietly, without asking permission. Walk through a single week, and you'll see, by Wednesday, why repairs weren't about saving $1. And by Friday, you'll understand something about that envelope that no direct deposit could ever do. That's the part we lost. Not the objects, the structure, the way the week used to hold what you earned. And the week starts the same way it started for a lot of people back then, at the kitchen table. The control room, pencil, ledger, a thick envelope, a cup of coffee. Not nostalgia, just the place where money had to become real. The kitchen table isn't a symbol. It's a workbench. It's where the week gets shaped before the week gets lived. A stack of envelopes, a few folded receipts, a pencil worn down to a wedge, and the quiet feeling that the week is either going to make sense or it isn't. Money is present here. That changes you. When money is visible, you don't need an app to tell you what's happening. You can feel the limit. You can see the edge. And the edge makes you honest in a way invisible money doesn't. Monday. The pay arrives. Not as a notification, not as a number behind glass, as a thing, as the week. Back in 1955, money was slow. It was visible. It sat on the kitchen table. You heard it. You counted it. You felt your next week in your hand. In 1955, a family could be living on around $4,400 a year, about $85 for the week. Not luxury, not desperation, just a boundary you can hold.
There you are. We've still got $40 of our week's pay left. Mind you, that's after all bills are paid.
A little comes off the top before it ever reaches the table. You don't need the exact math to understand the rule. What lands in your hand is what the week has to obey. And when it's in your hand, you can't pretend it's infinite. There's a step before the table, too. The check gets cashed, not on a phone, in a place. You stand in line, you hand it over. Somebody looks at it. There's a pause while they do their job. Money becomes real in a way modern money rarely does. That pause matters. It slows the whole system down. It adds effort to spending before you've spent a dime. It makes the week feel like something you're carrying, not something carrying you. Then it comes home, and the dividing begins. Not categories for fun. Needs that don't care how you feel. You don't call it budgeting. You call it paying what has to get paid. And you do it early while the money is still whole. Because once it starts breaking apart, groceries here, gas there, a few dollars here, you can't easily see what you've done. The week goes fuzzy. So you make the week legible on purpose. You set aside what has to be set aside. Not with anxiety, with routine. Not fear, orientation. Monday trains boundary safety. You can feel the edge. And because you can feel the edge, you can promise only what the week can actually hold. That pause at the bank, the weight of the envelope, the act of dividing cash at the kitchen table. None of that was designed to teach you discipline. It was just slow. But slow was the guardrail. When money moves slowly, you can see it. When you can see it, you can hold the week. The speed was the safety feature. We just didn't know it was a feature until it was gone. Tuesday, the anchor cost. The bill that sits in the center of the whole week like a heavy stone. The thing everything else has to work around. You don't spend Tuesday wondering what the payment will be this month. It's not a subscription fee that changes 3 times a year. You already know it. It's a number you can say without looking. It doesn't creep. It doesn't surprise you. It doesn't renegotiate the terms of your life every 30 days. A house payment doesn't happen in the background. It's a check written with your hand, a stamp on an envelope. The slow physical act of sending something out and knowing it will arrive. And when it's sent, it stays sent. It doesn't come back for a little more while you're asleep. It doesn't split itself into 3 service fees you didn't agree to. It takes its share, and then it stops taking. That's predictability, safety. Not comfort, not abundance. Just the anchor cost staying still long enough for the rest of life to be arranged around it. Boring bills make brave plans. There's a trade. The steadiness is narrow. If you want something bigger, newer, softer, shinier, you wait. You do without. You live in the same shape for a long time. But the week makes sense, and that sense is a kind of peace. And by Tuesday night, you can already feel it. The week has edges. The week has a shape. The week is a container, and the container doesn't leak on its own. Wednesday is groceries. And groceries are where the system shows its teeth. Not with drama, with repetition. The everyday proof. The place where safe is either real or it isn't. Before you even leave the house, you take inventory. Not a spreadsheet. Your eyes. You open the cupboard. You look at what's there. You look at what's low. You look at what can be stretched without anyone saying the word stretched. You don't build dinner out of inspiration. You build it out of what exists, what's already paid for, what won't spoil, what can turn into 2 meals instead of 1. Then you make the list, a real list, paper, pencil. The week's plan written small enough to fit in a pocket. It isn't aesthetic, it's functional. It's the week speaking in simple language. Bread is about 18 cents a pound. Milk is about 22 cents a quart. Eggs are about 55 cents a dozen. You don't say those numbers like trivia. You say them like limits. Because every number is a wall around the week. And inside those walls, dinner isn't a decision. It's a fact. And facts are calming in a way that infinite options never are, because it turns guessing into deciding. The trip itself adds discipline without anybody trying. You drove there. You walked the aisles. You carried the bags. You're not going back tomorrow because you got bored at 9:40 p.m. Spending has friction built into it. And the store isn't built to keep you grazing, not the way it is now. You're not surrounded by convenience pretending to be necessity. You're surrounded by ingredients. Work disguised as food. This is choice safety. Not because you have endless options, because you don't. Fewer versions, fewer upgrades, fewer tiny doors money can fall through. The week gets simpler because the world is simpler. Leftovers aren't a hack. They're tomorrow's certainty. Waste feels loud, not because anyone is judging you, but because you can see it. It takes up space. It stares back from the trash can. The week tastes like what it can afford. Now, here's where I have to be honest with you. Because if I don't say this part, nothing else I've said is worth trusting. This steadiness had a shadow. When the week is built like a box, it holds you until it doesn't. If something truly bad hit, illness, layoffs, a bad season, the same rigidity that made life feel steady could turn cruel overnight. The envelope didn't care. Neither did the landlord. That's the trade. The week makes sense, but it doesn't forgive. And understanding that trade is the only way to understand why the safe feeling was real and why it mattered. Now keep going, because the rest of the week shows you what that rigidity trained. Thursday is errands, and errands are where modern life quietly bleeds you. Not because they're expensive, but because they multiply. Back then, leaving the house is a commitment. The day has a route. You bundle things together. Gas is about 29 cents a gallon. But that's not the real cost. The real cost is the trip, the time, the fact that if you forgot it, you live without it. You stop where you have to stop. The bank, the post office, the hardware store, the pharmacy, places with counters, places with hours, places that close, places that make you plan. Those hours are a guardrail. The world isn't open all the time, so you're not in a constant relationship with purchasing. Shopping isn't entertainment. It isn't comfort. It's a task you complete, and then you come home. This is time safety. There are fewer late-night escape hatches for money to slip through. You can't impulse buy at midnight on a Tuesday because there's nothing open that can take your money. The week gets protected by closing time. Spending requires effort, and effort filters behavior. You didn't buy things on the way to doing life. Doing life was the thing. Spontaneity exists, but it isn't frictionless, and frictionless is what turns a week into a leak. So what is it that we lost and never named? Well, back then, the economy had unwritten rules. One income meant one stream to track. Credit was hard to get, so debt couldn't sneak up on you. Stores closed, so your money couldn't leave while you were emotionally vulnerable at midnight. These weren't inconveniences. They were guardrails, and they didn't require willpower. They were built into the week itself. The limitation was the safety feature. By Thursday, the week has a shape. You know what's left. You know what's coming. And that knowledge, ordinary, unremarkable knowledge, is what lets you handle Friday. Friday is where the system proves itself. Not in a perfect moment. In a small failure. Something breaks. It always does. And the question isn't the object. The question is the response. Maybe it's shoes. A sole starts separating. Maybe it's a shirt seam giving up right when you're already late. Maybe it's the toaster doing that thing where it half works and then doesn't. The object isn't the point. The decision tree is. You can fix it, patch it, borrow, wait, or do without. And the week doesn't panic because the week has rules for this. Replacement isn't a reflex. Replacement is a project. A project means time. It means driving somewhere. It means looking at something and deciding if it's worth it. It means waiting. It means not getting the instant emotional relief of clicking Buy Now and calling it solved. So repair becomes the default, not because you're noble, because the week can survive repair. Repair preserves the shape of the week. Replacement threatens it. In a slow system, repair isn't a virtue. It's logic. This is repair safety. Problems have a known response. Things can be mended. Plans can be patched. The week doesn't collapse just because something went wrong. Competence is normal. And when competence is ordinary, a surprise doesn't automatically become a spending event. When you fix instead of buy, waste can't hide. It sits in the trash where you have to walk past it. You don't get to outsource the consequences. You live with them long enough to feel what they cost. Competence isn't pride. It's stability. Repair was the default because the guardrails made it the default. You couldn't two-click a replacement at midnight. You couldn't split the cost across a credit card you got in the mail without asking for it. The friction of buying made fixing feel obvious. Remove that friction, and fixing starts to feel irrational, even when replacing is what's actually breaking the week. Saturday is quieter. Saturday is where the week gets stitched back together, not with a strategy, with a habit, with the small rituals that make a week feel containable. A coffee can on the shelf, not labeled, not ceremonial, just there. Not a financial product, not a plan, a place. A small, unglamorous answer to the question, what happens if something small goes wrong next week? A little gets set aside before the week gets ideas. Not because you're disciplined, because nothing else is pulling at it. No constant auto-pay drips. No subscriptions multiplying like vines. No background money leaving while you're not looking. This is buffer safety. It doesn't make you rich. It makes you calmer. It's the difference between a bad moment and a ruined week. It turns panic into a schedule. A little set aside can quiet a whole house. And you don't even talk about it like saving. It's not a goal. It's maintenance. It's the same kind of maintenance as tightening a loose screw before it becomes a bigger problem. It's the week protecting itself. Sunday is planning. And planning only works when planning is rational. When the rules stay still long enough to plan around. When you aren't guessing. When you aren't bracing. When you're just reading the week like a calendar. You look at what's left. You look at what's coming. School needs, church clothes, a birthday next month, a tire that's starting to look tired. Nothing dramatic, just the slow maintenance of a life. And the feeling is different. You don't feel like you're predicting the weather. You feel like you're counting steps. The future isn't a fog. It's a line you can walk toward. That's legibility safety. That's what safe meant. Not comfort, not abundance. Legibility. The rules were slower, and slow rules make people feel steady. That steadiness is what made planning feel possible. And now the payoff. Because this is the part you can feel in your body if you've ever lived week to week. By Friday night, the envelope is lighter. The bills that had to be paid are paid. The groceries are in the house. The break got handled, patched, fixed, postponed, survived. You lived inside this week. You didn't borrow from the next one without feeling it. And that silence we talked about at the beginning? This is it. Not a luxury, not a reward, just the sound of a week that ends where it started, with the ledger closed and nothing still running in the background. So where did that go? When did we lose that feeling? Here's what happened. Nobody signed a law that killed this. Nobody sat in a room and decided to make the week impossible to hold. What happened was speed. The economy got faster. 2 incomes became necessary, then normal, then expected. Credit got easier. Spending went digital. Stores stopped closing. And every single guardrail that had been keeping the week together, the friction, the slowness, the limitation that was quietly functioning as a safety feature, got removed in the name of convenience. We didn't trade safety for danger. We traded safety for speed. And the speed felt like freedom, right up until it didn't. And we've been tired ever since. So tell me, what in your week is still moving too fast to plan around? And what would it take to build even one guardrail back? And if you want to see what that speed did to something else we used to take for granted, I'll put that right here.